computer. Okay, I want to welcome everybody to Turner's Talk. And tonight we've got our first time ever on a Turner's Talk, a special guest, and that is Matt Iannacci. Did I pronounce that right, Matt?
Nailed it.
Okay, let me highlight you and make sure you stay up on the screen. And then, there we go. And Matt has created a new device that he is getting ready to put out that's going to help you with your stave cutting for segmented turning. So, yeah. Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk about it.
All right,
and
sounds good.
If anybody's got a question, please make sure you unmute your mic.
So, like Jeff said, my name is Matt Iannacci. I'm here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and this is the tool for anyone that hasn't seen it. This is one of the 3 prototypes that exist right now, and it does a handful of things. It does the calculations for stave work, splayed stave work, and you can also use it for calculating and setting up your saw for regular segmented work as well. So real quick, the reason that I kind of fell into inventing this, and I say fell into because I did the math first, and then I kind of realized there was some geometry in the math, and I could maybe pull something out of this, is stuff like this. This is actually an unglued vessel. My lighting isn't great, but you can see those glue lines would be pretty tight. This is straight off my saw. I haven't sanded or adjusted this. And actually, this is I think Pommel Sapelli, so it actually chipped on my saw. One of the tricks that I use is after I cut the pieces, I cut a narrow groove so I can actually put everything together with rubber bands. It makes my life a little easier. But this is just held together with rubber bands right now, and the glue lines are, I mean, I wish you guys could see it and hold it. They're really, really great if I can align the pieces properly. So for me, this is the type of thing I don't even think I'd do any work on the glue lines for this. I just glue it up, clamp it real tight, and these come out really nicely for me. So cutting these pieces gets a little bit difficult though, because when you have a straight stave piece like a barrel, they're going to look rectangular from one side, and then on the edge they're just going to be canted in, and it's easy to figure out, 360 degrees divided by however many pieces you have, and you're golden. With these, they come out at either as trapezoids or as triangles in terms of what the shape looks like, and it depends on how far out they're splayed as to what the shape actually is. And also these angles are no longer the same angle. They're not, if you have 10 sides, they're not going to be 18-degree sides. They're going to be something different that depends on how much those walls lean in or out. So real quick, what I wanted to avoid, let me see if I can share my screen here and share. I guess I can't share my screen because my system's not set up right. It's okay, I have printouts.
I was gonna say, I made you.
I did. I have to like go into my system preferences and allow stuff. I haven't actually used that option before.
Okay.
Let's see here. I don't have my printout right here. Oh, here it is. Okay. So basically what I did is I started with saying, okay, well, I can always make a vessel out of a bunch of triangles glued together. And then what I really want is I want to cut this piece that's indicated by the solid black lines. And there's a whole bunch of math that goes along with it. I know this is backwards for you guys, but basically what it comes out with is that you end up with this miter angle that's an arctangent function of a whole bunch of made up measurements. And then for the saw blade tilt, you end up with another arctan function that's also a function of the calculated miter angle. So you can figure it out yourself if you have the patience to do that and you have a lot of time and a good calculator. The other thing that you can do is you can go to a lookup table. This is actually the one from Matthias Wandel at woodgears.ca. He did a video on this about 7 to 10 years ago, somewhere in that range. But the real problem comes with, I have my example table saw here. I'm going to scooch back, and so let me set it up here. If you look at this as my blade to my table saw, and then my miter gauge track is here, there's 2 angles I have to set. I actually have to set the angle of the blade And then I also have to set, give me a second, it's stuck. All right, I actually have to set also the angle of the miter gauge here. And my problem, the miter gauge was not that hard to set if I could get my bevel gauge to be a very precise angle. So as long as I could get very, very precise, precisely right angle, then the miter gauge wasn't that hard. These angles are only good to 2 decimal points, which leaves you with some sanding to do afterwards. You can usually glue something up in halves and then sand it to make it fit. But the real problem came in setting the blade. And I'll show you the reason why. Is if I have, you know, say my angle is about there, whatever that is, I can push it up against the blade and I can then set the blade based on that angle and I can lock it down. But the real problem is if you look right at that seam between my miter gauge and the saw, if you're off by just a little bit in terms of the angle of how that's approaching your saw, you can see there's a blank space right in there. So I can actually end up setting the wrong angle on my saw blade if I'm not perfectly set up with my miter gauge against that saw blade. So that was leading to a lot of problems. I was cutting a lot of expensive wood to try to make vessels that I was really proud of, and I wasn't ending up with great results. So I said there had to be a better way to do it. When I looked at the math, this guy is what I came up with. So the way it works, or the way that you would use it, is on the front plate, what's called the detent plate, there's a whole bunch of holes. And each hole has a number. They range from 3 to 36 sides. And what you do is you choose the number of sides that you want. And in the actual production one, there's going to be less threading. There's a lot of threading right now, but there's going to be less in the production. So if I want 9 sides, I put the detent pin in the hole that's associated with the number 9, and I thread it through. On this arm here, there's a slot right there. And I just line that up and I lock it into place with the detent pin. If it's flat right now, what it's actually set up to do is it's set up, this is the angle that you would cut for a vertical walled vessel, like a barrel. So basically, if you look at the face of this, whatever angle the face of this is what angle your pieces would be in your final vessel. So this is telling me right now my sides would be vertical. And the way I would use this then is I take and I bump it up against my saw. I'm gonna actually take this off for just a second here. Oh. So I would take this and I actually bump that up against the saw blade. And the nice thing about this is instead of being a line contact that can rotate, the entire face of this part here, what's called the reference arm, contacts the face of the blade. So it provides me a really solid reference surface up against the plate of the saw blade to make sure that my angle is right. Now, if I want to add a splay to it, so something like this, where instead of being vertical up and down, my walls are canted out a bit. One of the other benefits to this tool is that you don't have to know the name of that angle. You don't have to say, oh, you know, for the lookup table, I have to know that I want, oh, 9's not even on here, and there's a reason, but I can choose from 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, or 12 sides. 5 is a weird one for this, but, and then I have to know, oh, I want them splayed out at 34 degrees. And then I can go ahead and I can look up where that is on the table and then set my miter gauge and my bevel gauge. With this, all I have to do is eyeball something and say, I want a bowl that kind of looks about 45 degrees. It doesn't even matter. I just have to like look at it. So what I do is I take the tool, I unlock the cam handle. In the videos that you'll see, this was originally a wing nut, and it was too tight, or it was too hard to loosen and tighten properly for the tool to hold itself. So in the new design, it's actually a cam handle. You just pop the cam handle open, you rotate this plate up, and whatever angle you like, you just lock that guy in place. So now the tool is saying, it knows how many sides you want, and it knows the angle that you want the sides to be at. Now you need the reference arm to be set up properly. So the last step, there's a screw on the back side of the reference arm, and you loosen that, and you rotate this down. You would have it on a level surface. Hopefully your saw is level. I actually use a workbench that I know is level. I put this on here, I lock everything down, and then I bring it over to my saw. But you line it up so that the bubble is in the middle of the spirit level. I'm going to do that on my desk right now real quick. And you just lock that in place with that screw in the back. It's all set up, ready to go. It's already done all the calculations. All the math is actually built into the geometry of the tool. So the first thing I do then is if I'm going to.
Matt, I accidentally muted you. If you can turn off the mute.
I should be back now.
Yeah, you're back. Sorry about that.
That's all right. So what I was saying is, once everything is all set up and locked down, all the calculations, all the math are in here, it's ready to go. It tells me both the miter angle and the bevel angle for my saw. The way I set the miter angle, I'm going to use my pretend saw here, is the back of the tool here. I can bump up either against my saw blade, or I can move my my fence over so that it's up against the edge. And I would take my miter gauge, which is in the miter slot here. I loosen the handle of it, and I just make sure that the tool is bumped up against the saw blade or my fence, and the face of my miter gauge needs to be making contact along the entire front line, this front edge of the tool right here. So once I have that set, the next thing I do is I put it right up next to the blade. I register the face of that against the blade, the plate of the blade. I make sure the entire face is solid against there, no gaps, and I lock the blade in place. That's all you need to do. It calculated the correct miter gauge and bevel angles, and then when you have your piece of wood, what you're going to do is you're going to run it. The very first cut you're going to make is a junk piece. It's going to just get rid of the edge, but you're going to run it through. It's actually going to be tilted a little bit, so it'll run through the saw one way, and then you take your board, you flip it face over face, move it over to hit up against whatever stop block you're using, and you run it again. There's a video that shows this pretty well in the on the Indiegogo page, and Andy Klein's video and Carl Jacobson, they both show how to use it. The device can be set, right now it's set up for the table saw, so the blade, the reference arm is in the low position here. If you're using it with a chop saw, you can take this off and move it up to the upper position so that the reference arm is closer to the saw blade when it's just sitting on the table of your saw. Makes it real easy to set everything up. And then all you do is you register the back of the edge again against your fence, and then you'd sight down and adjust the angle, the rotation angle of your saw to match that line on the top of this arm. But setting the actual angle, the blade angle, is exactly the same. You would just push the face of the tool up against the saw blade. This groove here, I actually had to add that after the prototype was made, but it's actually in the production version. The groove is actually for giving some clearance to your saw blade kerf. So you can put this right up against the teeth. The teeth fit right in there nicely, and then the rest of the blade, or the rest of the arm, registers against the plate of your saw real nicely. In the production version, there's another hole for a possible future extension on here. I'm looking at another addition, which could be bought later, but the actual arm is also a little bit longer so that it's easier to register. The other change that's been made, and that will be in the production version, and I will send out a PDF picture of this after the meeting, but the other change that's been made is on what I call the main hinge here. Actually, on this leaf of the main hinge, there's a finger that basically sticks up out of there, and there's a set screw hole in there. So what you can do is you set it up to make sure that when the main plate bumps against that finger, the angle in here is exactly 90 degrees. So you set that once with the set screw, and then you're good to go. When that's at 90 degrees, then it's all set up for when I dial it in like this. Now what it's ready for is there's no blade tilt. There's just a miter adjustment. This is now going to be able to help you cut those flat segments for normal segmented work. So it'll do both things. It'll do straight staves, it'll do splayed staves, and it'll do setup for segments, all in the same tool, no math needed. You just need to choose how many sides you have. The reason that I went with this particular vessel for a demonstration piece, let me put it back together here, is if you look at any of the videos about this, and actually even Carl Jacobson, when he used the tool, he actually mentioned this. He used the tool and he set this up a little bit quicker. And Andy Klein mentions the same thing, that he had to sand a little bit on one of his pieces, but when he really took the time to step through and make sure everything was really touching, he was getting really, really nice glue lines like this, and he didn't have to sand. That's the reason why I went with a 9-sided piece for the demonstration. I did not do any practice cuts for this. I just set the tool. I grabbed one of my favorite woods, happens to be a fairly expensive wood, so I was hoping that it was going to work as well as my experience had shown in the past. But 9-side, I can't glue this up in halves and then sand the 2 halves flat and glue them together. So I can't cheat on a 9-sided piece, which is why when I did the in-person presentation to the Pittsburgh area turners, I brought this, and that was one of the first things people noticed. How did you get it without sanding? Because you can't sand 9 pieces, not glued up in halves. So that's this guy. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in particular. The campaign, if you guys are interested, the campaign ends in 6 days. It's on pre-order now. I am all lined up with a machine shop ready for production. We're working on pricing aluminum and final production pricing right now, but the tool is getting produced. It got funded in like a day and a half. It was fully funded. So I was really excited about that. I mean, more than anything else, I'm really excited about just sharing this, just because it's it was hard math for me, and I like math. And I know a lot of people, when I'm in the workshop, I don't want to feel like it's work. I want to feel like I'm just making stuff, and that's what I love. So when this tool actually worked, I was real excited about it, and I was real excited to share it with people. That's kind of the story. My original prototypes were actually my very first prototype was paper. I told a little story before where I was at lunchtime at work. I actually made it out of paper and brass brads. My second prototype, I actually made it out of walnut and oak, because that's what I had, and I made it my own hinge and everything like that. And it wasn't great, but it did work. It worked well enough to kind of show promise. And then after that, I think I went to plastic, and then this is the first. There's 3 prototypes out there right now. Andy Klein has one, Carl Jacobson has one. This is the last one. I've been working with Euclid Machine out in Colorado. Those guys have been absolutely phenomenal about helping me with the final design of the tool and making sure it's manufacturable, and they're just setting it all up. They're doing it on their 3-axis CNC. They're cutting everything for me. So my ship date is by, what I'm looking at is my ship date is by December 1st, as long as everything goes well and we can get the aluminum. They're also in the process of moving their shop, so we're hoping everything balances out in terms of that workload.
Cool.
But I'm happy to take any questions about it.
What is the price point you're looking at for this?
Yeah, so right now with the pre-order, the tool is $190, and it's $10 shipping and handling.
That's not bad at all. Yeah,
when I worked through it, so what's going to happen is right now until through August 2nd, the price point is $190 with $10 shipping to the US. I have pre-orders for the US, UK, European Union, some of the Nordic countries, and actually Australia and New Zealand as well. Obviously shipping's a little bit more expensive, and it's been leaving me to try to figure out customs and everything like that.
Yeah.
But the actual, once production starts, which will be after as the campaign ends, I will be actually selling these on my personal website until the end of the run of production, but the price is going to go up. It's about $250 plus shipping and handling at that point.
Okay, great.
So
that's very reasonable for something like that.
And that's I mean, obviously I have to pay back everything that I've borrowed for myself in terms of production and stuff, but I really wanted it to be accessible for people who are interested. I didn't want to put it at $600. Just I don't know. I don't think it's worth that. I wouldn't pay that for it. I would think that's really cool, but I can't afford it. But it's so two things about it that I'm really proud of. Number one, it's solid metal. Obviously that drives the price up, but it'll last. And the other thing that I insisted on, and even in talking to people, people have tried to convince me otherwise to make a few extra dollars, but as long as I'm associated with the tool, it's being manufactured in the US. So I'm looking at options to possibly license the IP after the production run, but I'm really trying to be a stickler. I want it produced in the US for no other reason than that's what I want.
Yeah.
And I understand that costs me a few extra dollars, but like I said, the guys that I've been working with are absolutely fantastic. They take such pride in their work. I really can't wait to get the actual production tools out there.
Okay, great. Anybody got any questions?
That's awesome, Matt. It's an awesome looking tool. Are you going to do any type of directions that come with it on how to set it up? Or are you going to have a DVD available, something like that?
So I am up. Hang on one second. I think my daughter wants to say goodnight.
I might see you later.
Okay. Sorry about that. I got to take care of the kiddo.
Family comes first.
Yeah. I am definitely, there's definitely going to be an illustration, like a little booklet with illustrations. On the Indiegogo page, there's a link to the video that I made about it, which shows exactly how to set it up and talks about that. And, I was pretty proud of myself for, background music and doing some kind of sped up stuff for when I'm cranking my saw blade over. So I'm pretty proud of the video. My first video, my mentor told me, was absolute junk. So his honesty was much appreciated. It was horrible. I look back on it and it was absolutely terrible. This one's a lot better. I'm not going to say it's great, but it's a lot better and I'm proud of it. But I'll probably be making at least one more video showing an in-depth setup. Right now, there's a single video that's public on my YouTube page, and that's the one that's linked to the actual campaign. So if you've seen that video, you've seen the one thing I've ever put out to the universe. But I will make another one that will go a little bit more into depth about some of there's just a couple of nuances. The very first one is your lumber has to be very square, very parallel. So even this piece here, as good as the glue lines are, I actually think on just the very bottom edge of one of them, there's just that little crack, which I would generally turn away anyhow, especially considering this piece got chipped. The problem with this, it's hard to really show it, but I did not freshly mill this lumber. It was something that I thought was relatively square and relatively parallel when I just grabbed it off the shelf. And it's, like I said, it's some of my favorite lumber. But you really have to make sure that it's square and parallel. The main reason for that is you're actually using all four faces of the board as references. Because like if I use my keyboard as an example, my first cut, I'm going to be pushing it through the saw like this. My second cut, I flip it over and I push it through like that. So both big faces end up touching the bed of my saw, and both the front face and the back face end up touching my miter gauge. So if those are off a little bit, or if you're not all properly jointed and parallel, you're going to get reference surfaces that are a little wonky in comparison with one another, and those pieces aren't going to fit together as nicely. So that's the big one. And the second one, in terms of nuance, especially if you're doing a piece that is not vertical or not regular segment work, like flat segments, is to really take your time when you're sighting this. I use a flashlight kind of pointed at me, and I adjust the saw blade, and I'll actually hold it up to the saw blade so that the base of the tool is raised off of the bed. And then when the full base of the tool contacts the bed, obviously my saw is unplugged at this point, and I'm gripping the arm against the saw blade. And that way, as the saw blade rotates, the tool rotates with it. And it's a little easier, at least for me, to see when the light has disappeared from underneath. If you take your time and you set it up and you're real picky about how you set it up and you have nicely milled lumber, they turn out really well. I've done everything from 4 sides up to 13 sides. And then I actually did some 30 piece segment rings with it too. And like I said, if you're careful and you have, well milled lumber, I have really nice results with everything that I've tried. I'm proud of those glue lines. I'd show them to anybody.
Awesome.
So.
Okay.
I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I missed. I don't think so. I will be, Jeff, I'll send you some more pictures in a PDF that you're welcome to distribute, just so people get a kind of a better idea. I'm sorry I wasn't able to share my screen. My computer, my settings weren't quite set for that. I didn't realize that before, but I do have some kind of the CAD views, very nicely colored CAD views actually, of what the production is going to look more like. Like I said, it's changed a little bit from this. The arm, the extra finger to set up for segments, and a couple, instead of the wing nut, which is in the videos, the cam handles included. We also bored out the detent plate holes halfway, so the pin inserts halfway and you only have to twist it a couple of times to get it to engage, instead of having to twist a full 3/8 inch screw through the plate. So it's a little easier, but just as solid.
Okay. One thing, if you could, while we're on tonight, is if you can put in the chat the link to your, is it Indiegogo?
Yes, it absolutely is. Let me see if I can see.
Or any other links that you want us to see.
Yeah,
and I'll include
absolutely.
that with the video that I put out.
So that's Tranquil Jig JS3. So there's
Okay.
that's the quick link to directly to the campaign. If you go through, if you haven't seen all the videos, the video that I made is the one that's actually featured right on the campaign. All of the pieces, the finished pieces that are featured are stuff that I did that are actually cut using that the jig. The links to Andy's video and Carl's video on it are also linked in there. You have to look at the updates, and I think there's 7 updates that I've published, and there's links to their YouTube videos in there. The other one, if anyone's interested in just using the table, you guys are welcome to that. It is at Woodgears. I'm putting this in the chat right now. .ca/miter. Let me just double check that here. Here we go. I'll actually just copy and paste it. So that is a link to Matthias Wandel's, that's this spreadsheet here. I just printed it out. I take no credit for that whatsoever. He did a very nicely formatted version, and up until I invented the tool, I used to have this laminated copy hanging around my workshop. It was a great reference, and I wanted more, and I wanted it easier. I didn't want to have to actually measure. Most of my woodworking is spent trying not to measure anything.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. And what is the date and time that the campaign ends?
Yeah, so the campaign ends on August 2nd, so a week from yesterday. There's 6 days left in the campaign.
Okay.
I don't know precisely the time that it ends. I'd have to try to dig up. Give me a second. I might have the page here. Right now, it just says 6 days left. So,
Okay.
I'd say try to get in.
Hey, Matt,
Yes.
can you explain how the campaign, how that works?
Yeah. Okay. That's a great
I
question.
mean, the campaign is to raise.
I'm sorry. You're freezing on us.
I said, I just want to know how the campaign works. I know that, I already put my, I guess, pre-order in through the campaign.
Yes. Yeah.
But
So
why do they call it a campaign instead of something else,
yeah, crowdfunding, is that the term you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So basically what it is there's Indiegogo, and the other big one is Kickstarter. And it's called a campaign. these are my words, not theirs. But the reason I see it being a call to campaign is because what I'm trying to do, it like the initial phase of it, what I'm really trying to do was raise money to get to the point where I could afford production. What I did is I looked at kind of nominally how much the tool was going to cost to produce, plus all the money that I had sunk into it already. And when you look at the campaign page, at the very top, you'll see the brief description of the tool. You'll see my picture, and this is my only campaign. And then you'll see the actual funding. You see the amount that I see in terms of how much money has been raised. I ran what's called a fixed goal campaign. So my fixed goal was $8,000. If I did not if people didn't contribute $8,000 to my campaign, I would get no money at all. All that money would be returned to the people who sponsored me. Because my threshold really was about $8,000 to move to the production phase to help fund the rest of the work that the guys at the machine shop are doing for me and actually making these things. So some campaigns may work a little bit differently. The way that I'm viewing this personally is as soon as I hit $8,000, and so I started the campaign, I think, on a Thursday, and by Saturday morning it was fully funded. I hit $8,000 in a day and a half. As soon as that happened, as far as I was concerned, we are moving into production. I have the machine shop ramped up to go. What you bought when you contributed to the campaign and you selected the actual tool as your perk, they call that, I don't know why they call them perks. That means you are getting one. I am going to have them manufactured. I have 143 people that have bought them so far. There's probably about 150 of them or so that are going to get manufactured. All the parts are getting shipped to me. I will assemble them, and then depending on what other options you chose, they get packaged up and sent off to you. If you notice, the other two perks that are out there right now are, I'll make you a bud vase, wood of my choice, design of my choice, but something nice that I actually use the tool to set it up. And the other thing that you can buy is the case. I actually will make I have a plywood case that I make for it, and it's got the name of the tool and stuff printed on the top, and I think that's like an extra $30. That's totally up to you. If you choose to purchase that option, you're welcome to. If you don't, that's totally fine. You can just choose the tool. The one thing to be careful of, if you guys are interested in the tool, there's a little bit of a weirdness to how the Indiegogo page works. There's two listings for the tool, and they look very similar. One of them just says Tranquil Woodcraft JS3 Compound Cut Jig, and the other one says AUS and NZ. That's for Australia and New Zealand. You'll know something's wrong when you can't select the US as a shipping destination, and because the shipping charge is like $50 or $60 or something like that. In the US, you just choose the main one, the top one that pops up, and the shipping is only $10 in the US. So if you see shipping charges of $50 or more, hit the back button and see the other one. Click the other box.
And Matt, can you go in? Like, I already.
You're all set. I actually, because I saw your name earlier. Yep.
Can you add to that if I wanted to, like, say I want to add the box for it? I can go in and do that.
Yep, you can. There's a perk called the JS3 case, and it's $30. And if you just go ahead back in and select that perk and sponsor the campaign for another $30, you will get that in the same order.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep.
Excellent. Anybody else got any questions?
I'm really excited about getting your tool.
I'm thrilled to hear that. Thank you so much.
Okay, anybody else got any questions for Matt? Okay, Matt, my goal is to have this video up available to our members by end of day tomorrow.
Okay, beautiful.
I'm trying to get a lot of stuff done because I'm going out of town at the end of the week. And so I want to get that done. And I'll include those links with the video, and anything you send me, I will get posted on our Facebook page.
Okay,
for
awesome.
our members. Okay.
Yeah, I will probably tomorrow I'm sorry, before the end of the week, I will get you some more pictures. I today and tomorrow, it's obviously almost 8 o'clock tonight, and I'm not getting home until late tomorrow. So I will, I'll get them to you probably Thursday evening, some more pictures in a PDF.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Okay,
All right,
well,
everyone,
good.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Best of luck in your campaign.
Thank you so much.
I hope this really works for you, and you can create all kinds of new things for us.
I hope another idea comes along. This has been a very exciting journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So learned a lot about the patent system, about the postal system.
Yeah.
And a little bit about woodworking too.
Yeah, exactly. And my hat's off to you for understanding the math. Just that alone is mind-boggling. And I studied that stuff. You know? But that was a long, long time ago.
I have this theory that every problem that you can physically encounter, you can either solve with circles, triangles, or binary. And this one happened to be circles and triangles. So
okay.
I was glad to see that still holds.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Okay, well, thank you very much.
All right, appreciate everyone's time. Thanks so much for having me.
Okie doke. So let me get myself highlighted here. Well, it's not gonna let me do that, so I gotta turn this off here.
Can this also be used on a radial arm saw?
I haven't used it on that, but I would imagine that it can, because it's kind of independent of the device. So the other tool, I've actually used it personally. I've used it on the table saw, on my miter saw, on the band saw, which was a little difficult because the blade's so thin, and obviously the kerf takes up a lot of that. But I've also even used it on my jointer. One of the pieces that I did early on, I wasn't paying close enough attention to making sure that the plate of the blade was gap free with the reference face of the arm. And so my glue lines weren't good. I was pretty convinced that the tool still worked. And what I actually did is I put the base of the tool up against the fence of my jointer, and I adjusted the fence until the face of the reference arm was flat on the bed. And extremely carefully with good other stuff to hold the parts, not my hands anywhere near the blade, obviously, push it up against the fence and down. And I ran every side through the same number of times. I think I had to run each side through twice to get rid of the bad cut. But then the glue up came out really, really nicely. So I have used it on the jointer. I don't have a radial arm saw to try that on. But again, you're matching the blade angle up against the face of the reference arm and your miter angle against the line that the top of the tool is. So as long as you have a reference surface to butt this up against, it should work just fine.
That's a good question, though. There's still a lot of radial arm saws out there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So let's get down to, well, that's interesting. It's not letting me spotlight me. Huh.
You're spotlighted.
I'm not seeing me.
Screen.
Let me try something here real quick.
Well,
Here, I think I just
you really want to look at yourself anyway?
Let me do this. Remove co-host permissions.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not letting me spotlight myself. So, okay, well, anyways, I can see me now.
You're spotlighted, aren't you? Yeah,
Okay.
we can all see you.
Okay, so since we had Matt here,
Anyway.
right? Since we had Matt here talking about his new invention, which is a jig, I thought one of the topics we could talk about in Turner's Talk is jigs. How many of you, have created jigs for your turning to help with your turning, be it segmenting or fluting or anything else like that? Anybody with us tonight that have done that and got anything they can show us? And if you don't have anything to show us, that's fine.
Show you, but I can tell you about it.
Okay.
I watched a video on how to make wave bowls, which is cutting a wave in your bowl
Mm-hmm.
and then bending the wood to accent the wave. And there's a jig that you have to make. And I made that jig. And as soon as I get home, I'm going to use it. I just finished it before I left. So
Oh, okay.
they're called wave bowls. And who did I learn it from? I wish I had my notes. But anyway, I took a class on it. And then you had to make the jig. Of course, you had to buy his plans to make that particular jig.
Right.
But if you look it up on YouTube, wave bowls, you can protrude the wave, you can convex the wave, or you can cut multiple waves and angles in it. It's I can't wait to try this thing.
Cool. I'd love to see
So
the results of it.
but yeah, I'll show you one. Hopefully I have one ready for the next meeting. Or
Great.
I'll bring it to the picnic.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Anybody else? I think I've shown this once before, but I started experimenting last year with segmenting, and I've had some success with it, so-so. And the problem I think I ran into was I built a Segi sled, and I built it using 1/2-inch plywood, and my cross arms were also made out of 1/2-inch plywood, and I was still getting gaps. I was still having problems with the angles, and I think what was happening was the wood was moving, or over time the wood was bending, and it was changing my angles. So I just rebuilt it just recently with MDF, and that's my result. And I haven't had a chance to use this yet. I still got to put the track on it for the miter slot. And one of the things I learned with it, and I don't know that if everybody's had this or not, but when you drop that into place, the idea is you're supposed to just drop it in, tighten up your arms, and it's ready to go. I'm finding that's not necessarily the case. I'm finding that you've got to make sure. Here, I'm going to turn it upside down. I think it'd be easier for me there. You got to make sure that your arms are totally flush in touching the side of your Segi. If not, that's going to throw the angle off just a little bit, not a whole lot. So I've done two things for that. Number one, I take extra time in lining these up to make sure I get this just as tight along the full length of the Segi. Then I'm also measuring from the side of the sled to the end of the Segi on both sides here, measuring to within a 32nd of an inch to make sure it's as even as it can possibly get. And that makes a big difference. It really does. And I'm getting ready to, once I get some of this family vacation stuff out of the way and some of the trips we got planned, I'm getting ready to give it a try and build a segmented piece. Let me run real quick and get something. Now, one thing I'm adding to it that I didn't have on the original sled. The original sled, I had this piece, and that's set in the miter slot, and I could adjust that for the length of my segment, the outside length. This was a problem in that I couldn't keep it tight in the slot. I did a cut in it and a screw, and that helped tighten up a little bit, but it would still move. So then the other problem I had, and this was more being overly safety conscious, if you want to call it that, but the segments fall off onto the table saw bed, and they're right next to the blade. That made me very nervous, and I know a lot of people cut a wedge to tape onto their table saw right next to the blade. That made me nervous having something like that there, because if it came loose and it touched the blade, it was going to become a projectile. So I've seen a couple other people do it. I took this board, which is the same width as the sled, and I put a track on it for the miter slot, and I set that in, and that's flush up against the blade. So as the pieces come off, they come off right at the same level as the cut, which if you ever notice when you're cutting anything on the table saw, it kind of pushes it over just a little bit, just from the movement of the blade. So they slide over a little bit, gets them further away from the blade, so I can take a pencil, you know, with an eraser and just touch it and move it out of the way. So a little bit of safety factor there. And then this is going to get redesigned to get mounted up here, so that it'll be back here, so that that's permanently mounted to this piece, and I can do my width adjustments that way. And then it should not move at all, because it's a pretty tight fit. So that's the latest jig I'm working on for segmenting. The other one that I've done is, I've already showed you guys the drum sander I built that goes on my lathe. It turns my lathe into a drum sander. And I don't have that with me tonight because that's just not an easy thing to hold up. But there's videos out there on one of our membership meetings. I demonstrated it, and I think I demonstrated it at one of our Turner's talks too. So you can kind of peruse out there. I get it set up again as I'm playing around with the seggies. I'll make another video of it and everything, and post it out there for everybody to see. And that was a tricky one to build. That was really tricky. There's a lot of things in that I didn't expect I would have to think about. So anyways, that's what I've got. Does anybody have anything jig-wise? And don't forget to unmute your mic.
I built that that segmented wedge too. I built it out of MDF the first time I used it, and I got perfect cuts out of that. I made 2 huge segmented bowls that turned out really well.
Oh, and that's what they recommended in the video that I watched.
Using that.
But I didn't do that. I just used what I had on
Yeah,
hand.
and I didn't understand that at first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't understand that at first, and then I was talking to a buddy of mine. He says, "Well, MDF doesn't move on you
No, it doesn't.
like plywood does."
Exactly. And plus my plywood was 1/2 inch, so it made it very easy to bend.
Yeah.
That just happens naturally over time when I put it in the miter slot and pull it out of the miter slot, stuff like that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see how this operates. Just
Is it? You know when you put a face plate on, let's say you want to make a sanding wheel, a 12-inch sanding wheel with a big piece of sandpaper on it.
yes,
Would you make that out of MDF too,
you could.
instead of ply? Because I made it out of ply, and it
That's what I did. Let me
moves
grab
on
mine
me.
real quick. Hold on. So yeah, mine is made out of 3/4 inch plywood. That was simply because I had it laying around at the time, and the disc is Harbor Freight, and
So, yeah.
and
that's
it's
what I
lasted me a
did.
long time.
That doesn't move at all on you.
It hasn't, no,
The 3/4.
no,
I
not
used
at all.
a 1/2 inch, and it moves on me.
Yeah,
I'm
1/2
thinking
inch is
about
thin
either
enough.
putting Another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do MDF,
I'll
MDF or even plywood, do 3/4. Because you want some stability behind it anyway, since you're pushing up against it.
right, and the 1/2 inch, you can see it moving.
Yeah. And then every time I
Oh.
use this, I take one of those erasers and clean it up. And I've been using this for about
Yeah,
6 months.
It
and
lasts a long time.
yeah, this is how I, matter of fact, this is how I
Written
square up
down
my, this is how I square up my pen blanks now when I'm doing production turning, and I got like 30
Right.
pens to make. I use this, and it's a world of difference.
Yeah. What do you lay flat? Do you have a flat board that you put on there that you use with that to do your pens?
Hold on. It's getting very crowded around my PC now. I created this table. This table that
Oh, nice.
clamps down to the bedways. This is my 90-degree reference for putting the blank up against. And then when I put it into place, I basically get it up against the sandpaper, tighten everything down, then just very carefully from the bottom, on the bottom each side, I'll just tap it with a small hammer just enough to get a little bit of a gap in there. And then I'll check the gap with a ruler, you know, that just enough that I can slide my ruler through, my pocket ruler. Very little tiny gap, and it does a beautiful job then.
Yeah, it looks like, what grid are you using on that, 60 or 80 or?
What am I using?
Grit.
It's 80
What
80 grit. It's 80 grit.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's Harbor Freight.
yeah, thanks,
And
Jeff.
yeah, this is a 12-inch one. And you know,
Yeah,
this setup works really good. I would love to have a regular, you know, made disc sander and a drum sander. I just don't have the room for them, you know, so that's why I had to get inventive and create some of my own tools. And, you know, I got a big motor sitting here just waiting to be used. So that's worked out great for me.
there you go.
Necessity
Yeah,
is the
so
mother of
cool.
invention.
Yeah, I got a boogie. They want me to start my campfire, so,
Okay. Well, thanks for dropping in, and stay safe.
all right, we'll see you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Cindy.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. I'm gonna have to go also.
Oh, okay. So we're going to call it a night then? We've been at it for about an hour. Which we can do that. I mean, we're down to 3 people now. So why don't we call it a night? Thank everybody for stopping in. And like I said, I'm going to try to get this up online by the end of the day tomorrow. It may be late tomorrow, but that's my goal. So everybody take care, and we'll see you at the picnic. Bye-bye.